Are you terrified of forgetting everything after a night of cramming? Hey everyone, welcome back to this channel, and let's talk about studying. Have you ever spent the whole night studying for an exam, only to forget everything the next day? If yes, then you were cramming. Cramming is not real learning. It only stresses your brain. In this video, I'll show you how to know when you're cramming, even if you started reading early, and what to do instead. Stick around till the end for some great tips and solutions. So, first things first, what is cramming? It's when you try to force a large amount of information into your brain in a short time, especially right before an exam. It's stressful, it's messy, and it rarely works out the way you hope. You might remember enough to scrape by on a test, but the information will evaporate from your brain faster than you can say Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. But we'll get to that in a second. One of the biggest signs that you're cramming is that you forget information really quickly. If you study a topic today but forget most of it by tomorrow, you were likely cramming. Back in 1885, psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus figured out that people forget nearly 75% of newly learned information within a day if they don't reinforce it. Think about that, 75%. That's like studying for 4 hours only to retain the knowledge equivalent of 1. If you're constantly rereading the same information, it might be time to rethink your study strategy. Here's another sign you might be cramming. You open your notes and you're like, oh yeah, I know this, but then, when you try to explain it without looking, your mind goes blank. This is the difference between passive recognition and active recall. Recognition is like seeing your friend's face in a crowd and knowing you recognize them. But recall is like remembering their phone number off the top of your head. If you feel confident while looking at your notes but struggle to explain the concept without checking, you are engaging in passive recognition rather than active recall. You know that feeling when you sit down to study, and you end up reading the same paragraph 5 times without really absorbing anything? Yeah, that's another sign of cramming. If you keep going over your notes without testing yourself, you're not truly engaging with the material. It's like highlighting your textbook without actually understanding what you're highlighting. So, put down the highlighter, close your notes, and try to explain the concepts to yourself. Or better yet, teach it to someone else. Okay, let's talk about spaced repetition. If you study a topic once and don't revisit it until the exam period, your brain doesn't get enough reinforcement to store it long term. Spaced repetition is like having a conversation with that language. You practice it over time and it sticks with you. Review the material shortly after you learn it, then again a few days later and again a week later. It seems like more work, but trust me, it's way less work in the long run. Here's a big one. You can memorize information without actually understanding it. If you can recite information but cannot apply it in real-life examples or explain it in your own words, you are cramming, not learning. It's like memorizing a recipe without knowing how to cook. You might be able to list the ingredients, but you won't be able to whip up a delicious meal. So, don't just memorize facts. Try to understand the concepts behind them and see how they apply in the real world. One of the best ways to know if you truly understand something is to try to teach it to someone else. This doesn't mean you need to give a lecture to your classmates, though you totally could. Even just explaining a concept to a friend or family member can help solidify your understanding. If you can't break down what you've read in simple terms, or apply it in different contexts, your brain is likely holding the information short-term. Remember, the best way to learn is to teach. We've all been there. You have an exam coming up, so you decide to pull an all-nighter and cram everything in. But here's the thing, studying for hours without breaks might feel productive, but it tires your brain and reduces retention. It's like trying to run a marathon without stopping. Short, consistent study sessions, like the Pomodoro technique, work better. This technique involves studying for 25 minutes, taking a 5-minute break, and repeating the cycle. Let's be real, cramming is stressful. And stress is not your friend when it comes to learning. Cramming increases stress hormone levels, cortisol, which affects memory retention. A 2016 study found that students who cram experience higher anxiety and perform worse on tests compared to those who use effective study methods. So, if you find yourself feeling overwhelmed and stressed, take a step back, take a deep breath, and remind yourself that your mental health is more important than any exam. Gap 3S. And let's not forget, real wisdom and understanding come from God. Don't just rely on cramming, ask God for wisdom. Proverbs 2:6 reminds us, "For the Lord gives wisdom, from his mouth come knowledge and understanding." If you find yourself struggling with studying, take a moment to pray and trust God. James 1:5 tells us, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given to him." So lean on your faith and trust that you will gain the understanding you need. So, there you have it, 9 signs that you might be cramming, even if you don't realize it. Remember, cramming isn't real learning, and it's definitely not good for your mental health. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let me know in the comments. Have you been cramming, or are you using the right study techniques? Let's talk.